São Paulo, Brazil, and has resided in the United States since 1991. Having been in contact with the Spiritist doctrine in the United States from an early age, today she volunteers at the Conscious Living Spiritist group in North Miami and is also responsible for the youth group. As an active participant in the Spiritist movement, Andrea is part of the Spiritist Federation of Florida Board of Directors, where she currently serves as Director of Events. In the dissemination of the Spiritist meetings, Andrea is a volunteer at Edison of America, a Spiritist publisher serving the USA and Canada, affiliated to the International Spiritist Counselors publisher in Brazil. So please welcome Andrea Marshall.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've had the pleasure of getting to know some of you finally personally and seeing new friends and meeting new ones. So it's a true pleasure and honor actually to be up here and being able to share the study that we will be sharing today. And before we begin, I just wanted to congratulate once again the organizational committee for this seminar. It was said yesterday, if it's the 6th, something's been done very right to be able to get to this point. So God bless you, and may we continue and be here in the next year. Our study today is Healing from Jesus to Modern Days. We decided to bring here the sources of the books that we used for the presentation, not only because in reality I wouldn't have anything better to say than the enlightened spirits, but also to awaken the curiosity, should you have it, upon reading some of the quotes from the good spirits about the aspect of healing. So here we have the book by Andrea Lewis, channeled by Francisco Cândido Xavier. We used the book Action and Reaction. We used the book Between Heaven and Earth and In the Realms of Mediumship. And then we also went back to the codification to be able to get a lot of the information brought on by Allan Kardec and also the enlightened spirits. When we think about the aspect of healing, we see that from the moment that the greatest healer of all time was among us, and here we're talking about Jesus, up to today, a lot has changed. Everybody's in agreement? Yes? Although science has progressed and we have come a long way in trying to see the deepest part of our tissues and mapping out our brain, we realize that one of the things that stays the same is the constant search for answers for the immortal spirits. Our anguishes, our fears, our doubts, our search for true happiness, which is one of the aspects of being healthy, is the aspect that we are happy. It still stays the same. So the question is, who doesn't want to be healthy, right? Who here hasn't searched for different processes of healing, or who hasn't seen a family member or a friend or somebody that we care about deeply going through a process, going through an illness that is so deep, not finding the cure for it, being filled with anguish, oftentimes despair, especially if the person doesn't have a vision of a future life or the spirit as being an immortal being. And this is why we decided to bring the study here, because in studying about the aspect of healing from the times that Jesus was among us, and studying some of the healing that he performed based on the gospel, and then taking a look at our modern world today, we find that there's a lot of information missing so that a lot of people could get their hands on and be a little bit more calm and serene as far as illnesses are concerned, if that's even possible. But how is the word health defined? Let's see here. This thing works. Yes. According to the World Health Organization, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. It's an interesting definition that they give, but to be quite honest, first of all, who agrees with this definition? Could there be anything else involved? This is where some people, a lot of people started questioning this definition given by the World Health Organization. There is a gentleman that wrote an extensive article on the website on the definition of the word health, and this is working. I'm going to ask my technology medium to go forward there, just one hit. There we go. He says that for some, health encompasses mental health, for others physical only, while many see that in reality both mental and physical goes hand in hand. But then other people come and say, this definition is incomplete. I don't agree that that's the only definition of health. This is over the decades. Different kind of researches and different kind of ideas have been offering many criticism about this kind of definition that was provided. They say that it excluded important dimensions. This is in the World Health Organization website. It's pretty profound, because they say that the important dimensions missing is the spiritual and ethical dimensions of health. When we study about Spiritism, we can't help but smile a little bit and see that finally there is some kind of connection almost coming, where we are traveling our pathway and eventually things will combine and start interrelating with one another. And so, we go back to this question here. Who here has studied about Spiritism a lot? Okay. Have you guys gotten to the part of the different categories of inhabited worlds? Good. So everybody here is in agreement that we are in the second category of world, which is of trials and expiations, or trials and atonements. So in looking at what categorizes a world of trials and expiations as is this definition a reality in our world? Absolutely not. Because the gospel, according to Spiritism, will tell us, first and foremost, that the planet Earth, our world, as it is today, is a place or a station, if we want to call it that way, that is appropriate for the advancement of the spirits that inhabit it. That we are offered all the necessary tools for evolvement. Some of these tools are painful. And they're painful because of what? The choices that we have made oftentimes, yes? But other times we see other things that we start questioning a little bit about God's justice. But one of the characteristics of a world of trials and expiations is categorized by infirmities among other traits. That's not in the book Action and Reaction. That's in the book The Gospel According to Spiritism. So one of the definitions, one of the characteristics of a world of trials and expiations is one that has infirmities among other traits. And this is where the definition provided by the World Health Organization gets a little bit tricky. Because we're not talking only about infirmities of the flesh. Andrea Lewis in the book Action and Reaction will tell us that there is a more profound and deeper source of pain than that of the flesh. And here we're talking about that of the soul. The diseases of the soul are much more painful and serious than those of the flesh. There are diseases of the soul that can ruin the mind for a long, long time. Now, considering that the spirit is an immortal being, and that we oftentimes carry the reflections of our actions on our perispirit, which is going to be the mold for a future physical body, we start understanding how complicated it gets, the aspect of the definition of the word health. Now keep going here because it's going to get a little bit better. With the advancement of technology and the sciences, science has also come up with this idea that Spiritism actually supports. They're saying that almost all of the population either have an actual or potential predisposition to some future disease. So the other day, I went to an iridologist. Do you guys know what an iridologist is? It's a person who is able to study the iris of the eyes and come up with some mapping of where there is some kind of imbalances. But they don't just do that. They see parts of your spiritual body, which they don't call it perispirit, where there is a predisposition for illnesses. And so they start treating us before the disease finds itself in the physical body. Now, Andrea Lewis, in the book Missionaries of the Light, when he is studying the case of reincarnation, how many people have read this book? Oh, good. Read it again. Because it's so much information, and as we read and the more we know, our mind broadens and we understand things in a whole new view. But here's this gentleman who is going to be reincarnating, Segismundo. And they're talking about him, and Andrea Luiz has been invited to participate in the process of reincarnation. And then he tells us here that in the preparation for reincarnation, the instructor says that he was already seeing the diagram of the friend's future physical body. I got a close look at the images of the heart disease he will suffer as an adult as consequence of the wrong he committed in the past. Segismundo will experience large disturbances in his cardiac nerves, particularly those regulating the cardiac tonus. So here's science coming up to us telling us that there are some people who have either a potential or an actual predisposition to certain illnesses. And Andrea Lewis, who is a doctor of the beyond, comes and brings us information as the loving reporter that he is, showing us exactly this. Now, Christ once stated that love can erase a multitude of wrongdoings. And so we learn a lot of times that sometimes we are able to lessen, not void, but lessen the type of trials we are to endure based on this mapping of what we are going to go through in our physical life through the ethical and moral conduct. Now we're talking about a little bit of the information that was excluded from the definition of health from the World Health Organization. In going forward, we see here that Spiritism will give us another view on the aspect of healing where spiritual and ethical dimension is concerned. When the presence of illness has been made, Alex was very clear in stating that when that happens in reality, the source is of a more profound nature. It's that of the soul. And so we start hearing that as much as we have progressed, as much as all of this equipment, this amazing equipment has been created, is at our availability to be used, to study, to map out. The MRIs are able to capture amazing images of our physical body. No strong lens has been created to see the intimacy of our soul. That hasn't been created yet. And so we see the doctors are not able to see some of the source of what's causing many of the illnesses. But we have a very amazing tool in our hands as far as our own well-being is concerned. Let's see. We are also told that in conjunction with the assistance we receive from the above, this is the reason why the area of science and medicine has come such a long way. So, again, we see the interference or the presence of the spirits, as was so much stated yesterday twice, one by Marcelo and one by João, and how they actually do guide us towards some pretty incredible discoveries, that we don't work alone. And Andrea Lewis, in the book, Missionaries of the Light, in telling us about the need to start looking at the cause of the illness and not just the effect, we remind us that a sick body almost always indicates a diseased mind. It's pretty interesting that he's able to bring this kind of idea to us. But let's go back now, 2,000 years ago, and look at the one who understands all of this too well, often healing, and not just healing, showing us the way, not taking the responsibility from us in order to maintain their well-being established, but always reminding us that once the person was healed, he would go and say, "Go and do not look back." Now here we have to understand some of the teachings from Christ. Why would he say something like that? Going back where? You know? So here I am and I just healed Dennis. I said, "Dennis, don't go back." Or, "Don't go back into the town. Go home, but don't go back into the town." Well, my home is in the town. So I have to understand what he meant by something like that. Giving us a glimpse that we shouldn't go back into the way that we first were, causing the disharmony in the physical body that would reflect into the physical body. And so here we start having a broader understanding. Andrea Lewis, in an effort to keep bringing us this idea of understanding that the source is of a more profound source, will remind us in the book Between Heaven and Earth that once we understand the lessons learned from the divine doctor, who is our Master Jesus, we will teach others that the cure for all ills reside within ourselves. Nearly all human infirmities originate in the being: pride, vanity, tyranny, selfishness are vices of the mind that generate disturbances and diseases in the instruments of expression into the physical body. And then we start understanding more and more that indeed we are the ones who have the power of maintaining the health once we achieve it. That we also, on the other hand, can cause great damage to the physical body by the constant need to maintain our pride, our vanity, selfishness as one of the greatest obstacles for progress in society, as we are told by the good spirits. But not just that, he also gave us one of the most amazing tools in the process of healing, where healing is concerned, not only by the healed, by the person, but also by the person who was healing. And here he was talking about faith. In several moments in the Gospel according to Spiritism, in the Gospel of Jesus, from all the disciples, we see him saying, your faith has saved you. He never said, I saved you. It's pretty amazing. And one of the things that we have to understand why Jesus never said, I saved you, is because he's giving us the understanding that we have something pretty amazing within ourselves, that we are able to do so much. And if we should just understand a little bit more and believe it, the greatness that we could accomplish. He was always encouraging us. This was one of the traits from him. It was the constant encouragement. And so I like to say that if Jesus was here, he could offer the best doctorate program ever where healing is concerned. And I'm certain that we would all want to become his students, to understand exactly what he was here to teach us. And so although it's hard for us to bring all of the examples found in the gospel to explain a little bit of the healing process, we decided to bring one. It's one of the most well-known cases about a woman who had been afflicted or been subject to bleeding for 12 years. A lot of you are familiarized with this passage here found on Mark. Okay. So the Genesis according to Spiritism is going to give us some significant meaning as far as the healing of this case here is concerned. And I apologize for those who have already studied, but we'll try to make it very, very quick. A woman who had been afflicted with a loss of blood for 12 years, who had suffered much at the hands of several physicians, and who, having spent all her assets without having received any relief, but had only gotten worse, having heard about Jesus, came up from behind the crowd and touched his garment. For she said to herself, if I could only touch his garment, I would be healed. Now let's go back 2,000 years ago. A woman at that time wasn't seen in the equally. In some cultures today, that's true as well, but back then it was even worse. A woman who was subject to her menstrual cycle, even worse. There was a place proper for a woman to be at that time. So imagine this poor woman bleeding for 12 years, unable to get any kind of relief. Because the process of illness, when it hurts physically, also hurts emotionally and spiritually. And sometimes we become drained. That sometimes the healing that we want is not even of a physical matter. It's for the bleeding heart. And there is only so much that we can do to try to find that relief. We do resort to prayer, which is an amazing tool as well. But here, she not only felt this kind of stress from her physical body, she was also suffering spiritually and mentally as well. So all of a sudden, she touches his garment. And it says here that at that instant, the source of the blood that she was having dried up, that she was losing dried up, and she felt within her body that she was healed of the illness. And at the same time, Jesus felt the power had gone out of him. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I would be just like her. You know, if we were here and we heard that Jesus was coming, Haroldo's here, everybody's in that room. Imagine Jesus here, everybody wants to be there and touch him and see him. Just take a look, right? She just felt, if I could just touch his garment, just come approach from behind. Automatically, Jesus turns and says, who touched me? So Peter and the other disciple says, what do you mean who touched you? Everybody's here, right? He said, no, somebody touched me. And understanding what happened, she comes forward and explains the situation. Now, there is a transpersonal psychologist who says that the very action that she got up to say that she had done that, instead of kind of leaving the scene and not explaining and becoming embarrassed, shows the courage. Because oftentimes when we want to see the healing process, when we want to get healed from our moral infirmities, we have to have courage and stand up for ourselves. Have to believe in ourselves. And sometimes that's not very easy to do. But going back here, the words feeling that power had gone out of him, according to the gospel, the Genesis says that it's very significant because it expresses a fluidic movement. And we don't have time to go and study about the universal cosmic fluid or the vital principle or the vital fluid right now. But I invite you guys to do that in the Spiritist Center. But they're talking about the fluidic movement that had gone from Jesus to the infirm woman. Both felt the action automatically. And when we talk about the fluidic movement, as we said here, we are talking about the universal fluid, which is the primitive element of both the physical and of the perispirit. Everybody here familiar with the word perispirit? Okay, great, you guys are sharp. So as we keep going here, to understand a little bit about this universal fluid, we will see that by the very nature of this fluid that is condensed in the perispirit, it can supply repairing elements to the body. Now, if there was a fluidic movement happening there, and Jesus was in constant donation mode of love, which was what he was, essence, pure essence of love, walking among us, we can understand this kind of fluid that he was providing, this kind of energy that would supply instantaneous repairing elements to the body that was in disharmony, that was imbalanced. It says that the driving agent is the incarnate or discarnate spirit that injects a portion of the substance of its fluidic envelope into a deteriorating body. So if we're in the Spiritist Center and we are working with the laying of hands or the healing passes, however we want to call it, bioenergy or magnetism, we are talking about the fact that this is exactly what's being done. The healing occurs by replacing an unhealthy molecule with a healthy one. How is this affecting the perispirit then? Well, when we incarnate, and let's go back to Missionaries of the Light, and let's study the Genesis according to Spiritism, we are going to find out that from the moment of conception, the perispirit, which is the agent that allows for the process of reincarnation, actually starts molding together with the physical body information molecule by molecule. So it also says the healing power is either a direct result of the purity of the injected substance, as we see here in the case of Jesus, the purity of a pure spirit at that time. It also depends on the energy of the will, which causes a more abundant fluidic emission and gives a fluid greater penetrating power. And it also depends on the intention that animates the one who wants to be healed. And so in the case here that we see, what they explain to us is the reason why that woman received the immediate assistance, and maybe people did not. Her ardent faith acted like a suction pump. She wanted drastically to be healed. And he is in constant mode, so he's a force pump. It didn't matter. She was the one who had the ardent faith and desire to be healed. And that's exactly what happened here. It says that given as a therapeutic matter, the fluid must reach the organic disorder in order to repair it. It can either be done by the will. So when I pray on behalf of somebody as I am laying my hands, my intention, my will, my desire is that that person becomes healed in assistance and accordance with the relationship from the above, because I'm not working alone. And the person actually has a very important factor. If we go receive the healing passes or Reiki or whatever type of means we actually decide to do, and we are not there in a receptive manner, it's as if we are going in the shower to take a shower, but we have an umbrella and then a shower coat. The water's falling, but we're not getting wet. And so the faith allows for this receptivity to happen, for us to open up to this kind of idea and for the healing process to truly take place. So when we see that he said, your faith has saved you, he was right. It was her intention and her will that allowed for that to happen. And it's true, and the sincerity as well. So why is it that some physicians nowadays cannot heal the physical body? Because it happens sometimes, right? And the Gospel according to Spiritism would say that if physicians fail in treating most ailments, it is because they treat the body without treating the soul. And since the whole is not in a good state, it is impossible for any part of it to be well. Once science understands the key that Spiritism provides in the relationship between the soul and the physical body, true miraculous events are going to start happening. And this is where we are going towards. In the future, most certainly, the doctors will be able to look at somebody and see that there's harmony before it actually starts affecting the physical body. Now, whether the patient is going to take an active movement to do that or not, that's a whole other story. It opens up a new pathway to science. There is a book that is in the works that once it is released will be an amazing step for science to understand a lot of what Spiritism teaches. And it's a book called Evolution in Two Worlds. Now, I don't dare read that book. Not in Portuguese, I'm not sure about English, but that's something that's very profound, the teachings that are in there. And science will begin taking into account the spiritual elements as well, and not just the physical body. This is one of the reasons folk look for alternative types of medicine. Because we hear about maybe somebody who's going to the Spiritist center and is receiving the healing passes, and something is working for their benefit, and they want to know, hey, what's going on in there? Or they go to Brazil and they travel to somebody who's using the mediumistic faculty for the cure. There are some amazing healers in Brazil that are anonymously working. They're not known. They don't allow television in their place. They don't do any work of promoting what they're doing because they realize that it's not theirs. And this is also one of the things that we're going to bring in here about recognizing the person by their work or the tree by its fruits. So anyway, the Spiritist Center brings us what? The healing passes, yes? So do we understand what the healing passes is? What the healing passes are? We are going to see a little bit about that. But we're talking first a little bit about the energy imbalance. What is this here? This is a person who's incarnated. We are the spirit. We have our perispirit, which is our spiritual body, and we have the physical body. When we discarnate, we have the same, the first two. We retain that. As we purify, as we evolve, that also evolves the perispirit. But the physical body is just going to be given to us as a new instrument, vehicle of progress as we reincarnate. Spiritism will teach us that the physical conditions of the material body is a reflection, a direct effect of the healthy or unhealthy state of the spiritual body or the perispirit. And it also teaches us that some of the contributing factors for many of our illnesses are found in the positive and negative qualities of our thoughts and emotions. Alex mentioned that also during his study. The morality of our behaviors. Here's the ethical part of the definition of health that was excluded and people weren't happy with. The moral qualities of the surrounding environment. What kind of place do we choose to spend our time in? There's an amazing place that is full of energies, repairing oftentimes that we don't even realize, and it's always at our availability. It's either the beach, the mountains. Nature's resources are amazing. Now, on the other hand, there are other places that people choose to spend time in, which doesn't have a lot of great qualities in the air, if we want to speak there. It's atmosphere that contributes also for this. The condition of other nearby entities, incarnate or discarded, we also can understand this because it affects the state of the spiritual fluids that make up the individual's perispirit and consequently the personal energy field. Over time, as we struggle through life's difficulties and hardships, our health, the condition of the perispirit may be compromised. Because, as we know, it's not so hard to have a life that is filled with peace, right? It's a world of trials and expiations. It's impossible to maintain serenity at all times. Just when we think we have everything figured out, life comes and boop, pop quiz today. And we have to see how we're going to answer those questions, life's questions. And so the imperfect tendencies of our behavior is going to determine this kind of illnesses as well. The influence of less elevated beings that we attract by the kind of morality of our behaviors is another thing as well. And any excessive physical exertion or abuse that we have in our physical body, as so properly illustrated in the book Nosso Lar. When Andres Luiz is in the spiritual realm, and has already been taken from the lower zones, from the umbral, and his spirit is being studied, they're showing him all of the different places in his spirit where the imbalances found their place and why it happened. Andres Luiz wasn't too considerate with his physical body. And it wasn't only through the excessive drinking and other things, it also had to do with his intemperance. And, Alex talked about the heart attack. The more angry we get and we keep that in, bottling up, we start affecting the health of our heart as well, and other elements that comes with health. So the way that we can avoid these emotional, physical, and spiritual disturbances and protect ourselves against the harmful process is through the regular exercise of our mental and behavior vigilance, through the study of morally edifying teachings, and a strong connection with the spiritual benefactors through prayer and the elevated thoughts. This starts making a lot of sense. But in spite of all of this, sometimes life gets too hard to deal with. And one of the things that we can find to endure these physical issues that comes, to try to assist us, is one of the means of going to the Spiritist Center and receiving the passes as well. But this doesn't serve as a substitute for the efforts that we have to make. And I like to joke that when we go to the Spiritist Center every week and we receive the passes, what we are receiving is a B12 vitamin so we can continue our workout. That's what it's for. As a matter of fact, Jesus never took the responsibility away from the person after he healed them. That's why he would say, go and don't look back. Or go and don't go back into the town. Or go and don't sin anymore. Sin means to miss the mark. That's what it means, to miss the mark. And as we see here, with the process of the healing passes, the Spiritist Center does offer us the laying of hands so that we know, I decided to bring a little bit here, which I won't dive too much because of our time, is the aspect of magnetism, which wasn't a discovery or invention of Spiritism. It has been around. There is no precise date about this, but we do need to talk a little bit about the person who was really responsible for, or not responsible for, a great contributor in this study area of magnetism, which was between the ages of 1734 and 1815 that he was with us. And he is recognized and was one of the persons who was responsible for an in-depth study of animal magnetism. And Allan Kardec actually also makes note of this and praises him with respect for his contribution when he writes an article entitled Magnetism and Spiritism in the Spiritist magazine of 1858. And he makes a difference between people who only study about magnetism, as in not believing on outside forces that assist in the process of healing, which today is a very rare type of individual who has that kind of quality, fluidically speaking, to employ the instant healing. And Kardec brings another type of idea, because through his reasoning and logic and study, Allan Kardec notices that there are outside forces working with the healer in the process of fluidic exchange and movement. And he differentiates between those who study Spiritism, realizing that yes, magnetism is a natural force. It's within the natural laws, the divine laws, but that the relationship of the invisible world in the healing process is there. And this is what the application of the passes really are. It's an invaluable resource that we have available to us in the collaborative efforts between the incarnate and the discarnate spirits of the invisible realm. This is where I thought of you, Ona, because I know you're starting a study group. and it's really, really great. We're very happy, and hopefully one day we'll all be able to participate in that event at your house. But one of the things that Christ also did, as far as telling us about the process of being healed, is that we should be of service to others. Spiritism comes in and says that without charity, there is no salvation. Seems like a rough sentence, right? No salvation. But then we start seeing that charity is a word that means love in action. Agape, love. And we are invited by him often to perform a lot of the stuff that he did. He told us we were gods, little g, not the big G, little gods. We were gods. And then we could do everything he did and even more, giving us a glimpse of what awaits us as we constantly work for the benefit of others and at the same time benefiting ourselves. The Spiritist Center allows for an opportunity to be a volunteer, whether we are the past healer after profound studies and constant study of the Spiritist doctrine, we can't take that away, or whether we are just simply cleaning the floor, which is an invaluable work too because it needs a hygienic place for people to come and have a good place to study. But when John the Baptist sent his apostles to find out if Jesus was indeed the one who was going to be sent to be doing all the amazing work he didn't say, yep, I'm him. I'm doing all this amazing work. No, he said, go tell John that the blind see, the infirm are healed, the deaf hear, and the gospel is being proclaimed to the poor. In talking about his mission, he was saying, recognize me by my works. And he tells us also that we should be recognized by our works. So when we do get, based on the Spiritist teaching, enlightened ideas, and we are provided with a physical, moral, and spiritual healing, what do we do once we receive this benefit? Because Spiritism proves the providential mission of not only healing the physical body, but one of the greatest aspects of the healing aspect of Spiritism is the moral healing of the soul. We start seeing differences within ourselves as we start trying to make an effort in applying the Spiritist teachings. The magnetic, or passes in healing of hands, as we know here, it's a definition that we got from the book, in the realms of mediumship, is the transfusion of energy, altering the cellular field. In magnetic assistance, spiritual resources are blended between emission and reception, helping the individuals in need to help him or herself. There is an entitled chapter on the book, Missionaries of the Light, that gives us a glimpse on the work of the healing passes and this relationship between the incarnates and discarnates, which we hope that you guys will be able to go home and study. They tell us that although there are certain requirements in the spirit realm where they're working in the Spiritist Center, providing assistance in this area that is so delicate, one of the things that we ourselves need is goodwill and constant work of our edification. So nobody's pure in the Spiritist Center as of yet. And the reason why we count on them for the assistance is because we lack qualities that they don't. And so they assist us in this movement. And more than that, they give us an opportunity to be of service and be of work as well. Pain. Pain is one of the aspects of illness. Whether it's the physical illness or the mental or spiritual, one of the things that we do learn in Spiritism is pain has been one of the greatest driving agents of our spiritual advancement. So when we seek the Spiritist Center and we seek the passes, often we are suffering. Every type of different sufferings. And so they'll tell us in the book Action and Reaction that there are 3 kinds of awesome pains that we can go through. I say awesome because when I read this, it blew me away. They tell us that one of the first things that they say here in the ingredients of life's expansion, one of the ones that they say is the evolution pain. It's the one that we see a plant that is coming out of the ground, finding the light, the source. Sounds familiar? It's as if we are coming out of the ground as well, searching for the source of light. Sometimes it's a painful process. But in here they're talking about an evolution pain, which acts from an outside inward that improves the individual. A baby crying, for instance. Then they tell us about an expiation pain, which acts from the inside outward, making individuals on the pathway of time, keeping them in a complex maze of affliction in order to regenerate them before divine justice. But then they come with a third type of pain. And this is why we find some explanation on some of the healings that didn't take place. They tell us that there is also the medium, please, thank you, my medium technological medium. It's the assistance pain that exists as well. They tell us that the assistance pain is sometimes, on many occasions, the course of the human struggle. The soul takes on significant commitments of this or that kind. But they do say that as we go through, in forgetting about our own growth, we are given through the intercession of friends devoted to our victory, and let me tell you that it's an infinite amount of spirits that is really devoted to our victory and happiness, we receive the blessings of prolonged and painful infirmities. And so we start seeing that pain sometimes in illnesses is a blessing because they tell us that it keeps us from falling into the abyss of criminality, or more frequently, to prepare us for the discarnation so that we are not caught by unpleasant surprises in the transition of the death. So a heart attack, a painfully endured cancer, and other calamities of the organic life sometimes constitutes the assistant pains. I really think that you guys should read about this and understand, because although it's hard to believe, some of the healings that do not happen have a purpose. In the book Between Heaven and Earth, Andrea Lewis states very clearly that he finds a woman laying on the beach at night. He's there to see another situation, and he notices that there's a woman who is still incarnated, but her spirit is laying there on the beach, and she's receiving magnetic healing. And Andrea Lewis wants to know why that's going on. And they say that she was somebody who belonged to their close friends of spiritual friends. And in reality, she was there because she was in treatment. She was enduring cancer at that time. So Andrea Lewis is pretty amazed. He said, well, can that have any kind of assistance? When she goes back to her physical body and she wakes up, is that going to have any benefit? And they say, yes. It has a profound change in the patient's health, because when they act on the perispiritual centers and this realigns with the physical body, it's going to have this kind of assistance, especially if the person is in prayer and makes an effort that facilitates their intervention. But in her case, unfortunately, they say, because of the law that governs us, the law of cause and effect, her problem will be that she will only receive relief as she awaits for the physical discarnation. She wasn't going to get healed because her healing was of a more profound source. It was of her soul. She was readjusting herself with the divine laws. And sometimes we can't understand that. Why does somebody discarnate from cancer, a heart attack, other diseases that are so longly endured? And here's we have an explanation. But the beautiful thing about it is that we are never left alone. Even in the process of illness like this, we receive the healing from the beyond, comforting us and making us more serene as we approach the moment of discarnation. For us to understand that this is a blessing, we have to have a vision of the immortal soul and a future life, because otherwise everything is going to be seen as an injustice. Some get healed and others do not. Where is God in all of this? But He is a God of love. And this is where we start understanding. Jesus didn't heal everyone. I'm ending our lecture here in saying that although it's hard for us to understand, a lot of the healings at that time was also of the soul. There's this beautiful passage in the book called Promises of the Kingdom. I'm not sure if I'm translating that right. It hasn't been translated into English yet. But it's a beautiful passage that was channeled by Divaldo Franco through the spirit Amélia Rodrigues, in which he says that one day after a day filled of healings, Jesus is sitting in the back of the house and he has tears in his eyes. Peter comes and approaches him and thinks he must be happy from all of the healings that took place today. And so Jesus looks at him and he says, "You don't understand me." Now Peter is taken back from seeing the master crying and says, "Why are you crying? Why do you say we do not understand you?" You healed so many people today, specifically Nathaniel ben Elias, who was a paralytic from Capernaum, who was actually brought in through the assistance, through the roof, so that he could see the miraculous healing performed on him. So Jesus answered, Peter, while you contemplate the kingdom of heaven based on what you saw here today, Nathanael, at this very moment, with a childish joy and immature excitement, tells everyone about what happened here today. He is drunk and among women of the night, mocking those who made fun of him all his life, picking fights, and giving in to the pleasures his illness detained him from for so many years. Others who may have recovered their speech now speak again senselessly, acquiring new debts in accordance with the laws of life, which may be irreversible, with bad lectures and mal-usage of their newly acquired faculties. Do not believe, Peter, that the good news brings superficial joys. The message from my kingdom is much more than a promise for the future. It's a reality for the present. That is why I state that you do not understand me, and this is how it should be for a while. Later, when pain produces greater maturity for the spirits, I shall send a consoler that will continue the service of enlightenment of the consciences. Voices from above will, at all parts of the earth, bring hope and consolation. Centuries passed. He is no longer among us, and the painful processes did indeed serve as a tool for maturing and guiding the hearts who were once so lost. Perhaps we were among them. Pain was so enough in our minds that we pleaded that Christ sends us or comes back, bringing us some kind of consolation. The promise became a reality, and the promised consoler arrived as if falling stars from the above started descending upon the earth. The spirits talked. They taught and proved of a future life promised by Jesus, that indeed it existed. The enlightenment of consciousness as provided by Christ gained a broader dimension for the souls who were ready to listen. And so his message became present in our lives once again, enriching it and proposing immediate renewal. Spiritism symbolically means that Jesus has returned to the world, inviting us to individual growth through constructive and incessant work. And in realigning ourselves with this idea and the divine laws, we start understanding that that is the true aspect of healing. That the closest we are to the divine laws, the more distant we are from the infirmities. And then we finally can hear his voice echoing through the depths of our hearts, the echoes of those spirits that are enlightening. And we can hear him saying that he is the way, the truth, and the light. Thank you so much for your attention.